they said that in the Bible, there's a lot of metaphors that they use for the Holy Spirit, and one of them is rain, and one of them is fire, one of them is wind. They even use the metaphor of a dove. I told some friends of mine, I said, listen, y'all got to start writing songs where it says like, Lord, send the dove, Lord, send the fire. Stop writing songs that say, Lord, send the rain. Because churches all over the country are singing these songs, and the Lord thinks that we're praying for actual rain sometimes, and as a result, he has sent it. And so I told him, I said, we are outlawing rain songs. We are now singing, Lord, send the sun. Lord, send, I'll even take fire at this point. I'll take doves. I'll take anything. I just don't want any more rain for the love of all things holy. But nonetheless, welcome to this 6th week of this series, Ackworth, Kennesaw, those watching online. I don't know, some of you might not know this. We have extension sites as well that meet at Celebration Village and one that meets at Dogwood. And they send me pictures all the time, and I love it because two of those actually are retirement communities, and there'll be 30 people in the room. 4 of them will be sleeping. It's amazing, though, to be able to see what God's doing. And it keeps me humble, you know what I mean? Because I kind of pride myself on, I know what I'm not, but I know also what I am. And I don't consider myself to be boring, but sometimes when you get these pictures in and there's people asleep, you're like, I need to keep working hard to make sure that a strength does not become a weakness. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, I'm glad you guys are with us. It's really good. This is the 6th and almost final week. Next week is the final week of the series. We've really had a good time so far. And we talked about all different kind of relationships. And the series is called Swipe Right. And it's basically the premise is we want to continue to swipe right on God's plan for our life. Because when we get to the future, and we're going to, when we get to the future, we want to like what we see when we get there. And we've talked about dating relationships, we've talked about friendships, we've talked about marriage relationships, we've talked about coworkers, school, classmates, all that stuff. We talked about all kinds of relationships. And the reason that we do is because I think it's super important, because this is a statement that we make all the time around here. One time we did an entire series on it, and that is that the direction of your life is determined by the connections that are in your life. There is no way around that. That's why we're pretty picky with who our kids' friends are. That's the reason that we monitor stuff. That's the reason that we want to make sure we know the kids' parents, whoever they're going to be hanging out with. And it seems like overkill sometimes. And sometimes we're like, do you think these people are going to think we're crazy? But we just decided a long time ago, we don't care if other people's parents think we're crazy, because these are my kids. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to let them go hang out with you if I don't know you, because what if you're a psychopath? Or what if you're just weird, and we don't want our kids hanging out with weird people? And that's our prerogative, right? Hopefully you do the same thing. But the reason we do it is because we know that the direction of your life is determined by the connections that are in your life. And we did this whole series about who's in your boat. And the reason we ask that question is because if you tell me your 5 closest friends, I can with pinpoint accuracy show you your future. If you show me your 5 closest friends, I can show you the direction that you're going to go. It does not matter what words are coming out of your mouth. This is going to sound kind of weird. It doesn't even matter the desires of your heart. If you show me your 5 closest friends, I can, with pinpoint accuracy, like I mentioned, I can show you your future. And the reason I want to start there is because I want to ask that question again, and that is, who is it that's in your boat? Because eventually you're going to become like those people. The reality is, with people that we're friends with, you will start to speak the same language as the people that you're with. And I'm not talking about like English or Spanish or something like that, although even that's true. If you want to learn Spanish, you can buy those programs online, or you can go to another country and stay there for a few months, and you will learn far more just by hanging around with Spanish people, if you want to learn Spanish, than you would from taking a course online. So even that was true, but that's not even really what I'm talking about. The way that people speak, it will come on you depending on who it is that you're hanging around with. There are people that will bring you up. There are people that will tear you down. It just all depends on the people that are in your circle, or the people that are in your boat. That's why it's worth monitoring who is it that is in your boat. if you are surrounded by people that have lofty dreams, guess what will happen in your life? You will start having lofty dreams. If there's people in your life that have goals, you will start having goals. If there's people that are winning financially and they're in your life, guess what will happen to you? You will start learning how to win financially, even if you don't make as much as the people that are around you, because you'll start becoming more wise. This is true in every single area of life. That's why we've spent so much time talking about it. That's why I think you could do a relationship series for 52 weeks out of the year. If you hang around, if you're a parent, you will start to parent your children according to how the people parent their children that you hang around. It's crazy. I mean, this is true everywhere, right? This is the way that it is. It's been this way from the beginning of time. It's been this way from the time you were just a little kid. If you hang around people that are happy in their marriage relationships, you will start to become happy in your marriage relationship. But even if your relationship in your marriage is, you are perfectly content and everything is good, but now all your friends are all hating on their husbands or hating on their wives, guess what you will start to do? You will start to nitpick as well. And now all of a sudden they will sow seeds of discontentment into your life, and a perfectly healthy marriage is now going south. And it's because of the people you hang with. This is true in every area of life. And I almost wish I could just change the message right now and just start preaching this, because some of y'all are looking at me like you don't believe me. And anytime you look at me like you don't believe me, I want to prove myself. I want to show you that the Bible is true, because it is true. But what I want to do today is something that will piggyback off of that, because every relationship that's in your life is going to piggyback off of this. Every single relationship in your life, doesn't matter what it is, friendships, co-workers, classmates, dating, marriage, whatever the relationship looks like, even those with your siblings. I want to talk about something that every other relationship is built upon. And the reason I want to do it is because you're going to build on something, and a lot of times we build on the wrong thing. And if you build on the wrong thing, it doesn't always affect you initially. I would even go so far as to say, when you build on the wrong thing, sometimes it doesn't affect you for years, maybe even decades. And if you don't know that you're building on the wrong thing, you'll just continue to build, and then you'll be surprised whenever something happens and all of a sudden your foundation gets wiped away. And then when it does, you'll be like, I don't even know what occurred. But if you would have investigated the foundation on the front end, you could have seen that this was coming. And what I would rather do is I would rather show you that it's coming before it actually shows up, so that you have time to course correct, so that I have time to course correct, because none of us like to find out right in the middle of the storm that the foundation we've been building on is nothing other than sand. Let me show you this in the Bible, because I think that this will help you a lot. It says this in 1 John chapter 4, verse 7. It says, "Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God." This is what we talked a little bit about last week. Now, when we talked about this, we said one of the things that has to happen in your life is you have to understand that from us, if we're going to love people correctly, we've got to see that love only and exclusively, sounds weird, comes from God. Now, if we learn that it comes from God, God's the one who models how it is supposed to work. And if we see how it is supposed to work, then what will happen is we will begin to see that this is how we can, and I've used this term already once today, I'll do it again. This is how we can course correct in our own individual lives. So if we talk about this foundation thing, right, we see that God is the one who sent his son. That's what we talked about last week. God sends his son. When he does, he sends his son into the world, not to condemn the world, but instead to save the world. He doesn't send his son into the world to point the finger. He sends his son into the world to call your name. He wants you to be a follower of his. He wants to have and be in relationship with you. This is a big deal. And when we get to see it, we get to see that love is sacrificial, that love is kind, that love is patient. All the things that we struggle with, we find out that that's what love is. And as a result, we got to figure out how we're going to do it. And if we don't build on the right foundation, there's no way for us to pull this thing off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this thing to you, because I think that it will be able to help you pretty tremendously. And I'm going to show this to you in Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. Check this out. "Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, right? I want you to dial in with this. I'm not even going to put it up on the screens. I'm doing an experiment. And the reason I want to do an experiment is because if I can get you to just dial in for just a second, I want to see if maybe we can take this thing further than what I originally intended. Listen, anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents, that's typical, and the floodwaters rise, yes, this happens, and the winds beat against that house, watch this, it won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. But, you see, have you ever read stuff in the Bible and you hear it and you're like, that sounds good? Sometimes one of the things I like to do is say, okay, if that's true, I want to read it in the opposite way. Watch this. But anyone who hears my teaching and does not obey is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and the floods come and the winds beat against that house, it will collapse with a mighty crash. Now, some of you, if we're honest, we don't even have to be that honest, like a little bit honest. We know what the crash is like. Don't you know what the crash is like? I mean, nod your head at me or say something. You know, we know what the crash is like. You tried it and it didn't work. You tried all the stuff that you thought were going to bring you happiness and it didn't work. That's why you're in the mess that you're in right now at times. You know, there's people right now who are battling addiction. I pride ourselves on being a church where there's so many people who are battling addiction and they feel comfortable being in a place like this, an environment like this one. The reason a lot of people here are battling addiction is because they were chasing something that they thought was going to bring them happiness. And then it crashed. You know, they were chasing an individual and they thought it was going to bring them happiness, and then it crashed. They were chasing money and then they thought money was going to bring them happiness. And even though money did bring some things into your life, because it will. Don't listen to people who say that it won't. It will. But it will not bring you lasting happiness, because there's a lot of wealthy people who are miserable. There's a lot of wealthy people that are struggling relationally and in every other way. Now, don't think that that's money's fault. I hate it when people are like, money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. Money is not the root of all evil. Matter of fact, I pray some of y'all would get some of that, because we got stuff to accomplish. We got things to do. I need some of y'all to learn how to give. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. In other words, it's great if you make money, but if you fall in love with the money that you're making, you're screwed. That's what it means. That's the J.R. Lee modern day translation, and I feel as if it is even more to the point. You know what I'm saying? Because it is. That's exactly what it means. Because I'm telling you, I just want to talk about this because I want you to make money. Those of you that are generous in our church, every week I pray that God will bless you even more, because I know that you can be trusted with the wealth and the resources that God has already given you. I don't pray for those who cannot be trusted to make more. Even those that say, if I made blank, I would give blank. Because if you don't give when you have little, you will not give when you have much. Money just makes you more of who you already are. Praise the Lord. It's not money that's the root of all evil. It's love of money that's the root of all evil. And a lot of us build our lives on that. And then all of a sudden we get it and we're like, oh, my relationships still aren't that good. I still feel pain. Life is still hard. It still hurts. Or, man, I got into the relationship because I thought the relationship was going to bring me happiness, and then it didn't. At least not the way that I thought it would. And then all of a sudden the storms come. The winds come and the rain comes, and all of a sudden there's a crash, and we act surprised sometimes, and the reason we act surprised is because we didn't heed the warning. You ever read something in the Bible and you're like, oh, it was there all along. Same Bible you've been reading for years, and then you see something, same verse. You probably memorized the verse when you were 5. If you grew up in the church world, there's verses that I memorized when I was a little kid because I was in this little thing called Awana, and they would get in, it's weird, and they make you dress up like Boy Scouts, and then they put these little things on your little vest, and if you memorize stuff, you get little things on your vest, and then you get to go and do the 3-legged race around a circle, and you have to sing this song about Sparkies and stuff. Really weird. The more I look back on it, I'm like, no wonder people think Christians are hilarious. I still remember the song. It's like, I'm a spark for Jesus, sparks to light the world, or something like that. It sounds like you're a firefly. But anyway, and they probably are little Christian fireflies just buzzing around, doing their little light up the world thing. But fast forward years later, some of those verses that I memorized way back in the day, I'm just now realizing some of the meaning. And other verses in the Bible I was never taught, and I wonder, why was I never taught this? Why did the pastor never preach this? Why did I never hear this? Or usually it's not even that. Usually it's, why did they teach it, and why didn't I hear it correctly? That's usually how it is, honestly. Because a lot of times we don't like what it is that we read. Sometimes we hear verses like this, and we're like, no, there's not going to be a storm, and even if it is, it's fine. The reason it's fine, the reason you think it's fine is because there's been storms in your life already. I mean, the only way there's never been a storm in your life is if you're like 2. And I would even say that even if you are 2, there's been a storm in your life. We just don't remember that whole birthing process. That had to be pretty traumatic. That would be one heck of a storm, if you know what I mean. But if you think that life is doing okay and that everything is good to go, and you hear a thing about there's going to be a crash in your life, you just get to a point where you don't really believe it anymore. You're like, I've done pretty good up till this point. I've had some hard times, but the house is still standing. I've had some difficult times, but the relationship is still intact. I mean, maybe it was an exaggeration that the house will fall. You know what I think is true? I think there's a lot of us that are still standing, but we're just one storm away from total collapse. Isn't it crazy that you can be just one storm away? I mean, if you were to, even now, all these months later, if you were to go to Houston, Texas, you can see what it looks like when somebody says we're just one storm away when you see the flooding. Or if you went to New Orleans right after Katrina back in the day, you saw what it looks like when you're just one storm away. A lot of you know what it's like to be just one storm away because the storm has just recently come, and as a result, the foundation is gone. But I want to show you it doesn't have to look like that. John chapter 3, verse 16 through 18. Let me show you this. I want to read it in a different translation, a very familiar verse, but I want to read it to you in a different translation because I think sometimes that helps people to not take the verse for granted. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his son, his one and only son. And this is why. So that no one need be destroyed. And that's harsh, right? God gave Jesus so that you won't be destroyed. God gave Jesus so that there doesn't have to be a crash. He says, how is that even possible? By believing in him, anyone, say anyone, can have a whole and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his son. Watch this. This is so good, and I'm so grateful. God did not go to all the trouble of sending his son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. Which, guess what that means? If Jesus didn't come into the world to point the finger and tell everybody how bad the world was, that's not our job either. Because if the purpose of our life is to live out the purpose of his life, and the purpose of his life explicitly stated is not to point an accusing finger at the world that does not yet know him, why do we think that's our mission in life? It's like looking at darkness and yelling at it for being dark. Well, maybe if you would turn on your own light, it wouldn't be so dark everywhere you went. Maybe. He came to help, to put the world right again. Anyone who trusts in him is acquitted. Anyone who refuses to trust him has long since been under the death sentence without even knowing it. Why? Because of that person's failure to believe in the one-of-a-kind Son of God when introduced to him. Isn't that crazy? He says, if we believe in the name of the Son of God, we believe that he is who he said he was, and we put our trust in him, we are acquitted of all the charges. All the charges that God could bring up in your life. That should bring a smile to your face because that's a lot of charges. I mean, I'm just assuming you have at least as many charges as I do, and because I've placed my faith in Jesus, the charges were dropped against me. Now, he says, if you keep reading, and I just read to you, but if you don't believe, you have to pay. And he's not joking. He's not joking when he says we have to pay. He wasn't kidding whenever he said the charges can be dropped or we can charge you and say that you are guilty as charged. And he wasn't kidding when he said you get the choice. He wasn't kidding when he said he came to help. He wasn't kidding when he said he didn't come to point the finger, he came to make a way. He wasn't joking. He was being for real, and he was saying to us, to everybody in here, I don't care. Sometimes here's the tendency. Sometimes if you've been a follower of Jesus for a long time, you can take messages like this and you can think to yourself, this one's not for me. This one's for you. It's for everybody in this room. I don't care if this is the first time you've ever stepped foot in a church or if you've been to church for years. He says, I sent my son so that he can make a way for you. And now you got to make up your mind and you got to decide. The first thing I would say is you got to decide to get into his boat. You got to get in his boat. Now, here's why that's a big deal. Because a lot of us, we know about the boat. We've been around the boat. We could quote facts about the boat. It's like if I were to say to you, yeah, I know LeBron James. Well, you know him. I mean, we know that he plays basketball. We know that he's unbelievable. We know that he's better at basketball than us. We probably know some stats about him. We probably know some teams that he's played for. We probably know some championships that he's won. We probably know that he is arguably, definitely the top 3 best players of all time, arguably 1 or 2. There really is no argument there. It's between him and Michael Jordan, who is number 1. We know that, but he's never been to your house. He don't know you. He don't know you. He don't know me. If he's eating a chicken nugget and finds out one of us dies, he keeps on eating that chicken nugget. He don't know us. I'm afraid that some of us know God the way that we know LeBron. I'm really not even asking you if you know God. I'm asking, does God know you? Does he know your name? Is your name written down in what the Bible calls the book of life, where he writes down the names of all the people who have put their trust in him? Or do we just know some facts? Do we just know some facts about God? Do we just know a few of the stories about Jesus? Do we just know a little bit about what it is that he came to do? Have we gotten in his boat? Or for the last several years, have we been trying to get him to fit into ours? Do any of y'all shop on Amazon way too much? Raise your hands. I do. If it can be here in 2 days or less, I'm like, it's not even worth the trouble of driving to the store. Most of the time when they drop off boxes at my house, this is true, I order so much from Amazon, I don't even know what is in the box until I open it. It's not like I'm waiting on something specific. I've ordered so many things, I'm like, oh, surprise, and I'm the one that bought it. That's when you know there's an issue. Did you know when you buy stuff on Amazon, they have things called add-on items? Nothing's worse than an add-on item. Because you went and you just wanted to buy the add-on item, but you can't just buy the add-on item. You've got to buy something else first. What if you didn't want nothing else first? What if all you wanted was that thing that was an add-on item? I think a lot of us, we've treated Jesus like an add-on item. And we think that's going to be enough to get us into heaven when we die. And I just need you to know you don't go to heaven with Jesus in your boat. You get the surprise of your life when you stand before God and if all you had was Jesus in yours. Because he doesn't ask us if we want him to get in our boat. He tells us we have to get in his boat. He's not just an hour a week. He's not just fire insurance so we don't go to hell. He's not that. He's infinitely more than that. And if we treat him like an add-on item, and if we think that just by adding Jesus to our boat, then we're good, and we can go out and live life the way that we want to live it forevermore, and everything's going to be okay, it's not good, right? Matthew chapter 7, it says, if you were to continue reading, it says, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out many demons and perform many miracles? And then it says that God will look at them and declare to them plainly, depart from me because I never knew you. In other words, you never got in the boat. And I think the thing that scares me a lot of times is how many people have never gotten in his boat, but because we think Jesus is in our boat, that we're still good. And I just need you to know that it's not the way it works. There used to be bumper stickers all the time that said, Jesus is my co-pilot. That's not the way that it works. He's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He's not going to be anybody's co-pilot. You either get on his boat and do it his way, or you get left back there somewhere. He's the one driving. If you're on a ship, you do not get to touch that big giant wheel thingy. I don't know what that's called, and I do not care. I just know I don't get to touch it when I'm on God's boat. I don't get to touch the big giant wheel thingy. He gets to touch the big giant wheel thingy. I just wonder which boat we're in. I'm afraid, honestly, that a lot of us are in our own boat, and we've asked him to get into ours instead of realizing that God tells us we have to get in his. You got to get in a boat. So how do I get in the boat? You get in the boat by doing what he told us to do. And I'm not even talking about obedience right now. That's not even where I'm going. I'm talking about just simply doing what he said to do, and that is to say, you know what? I can't do it on my own. My boat is not powerful enough to get where we need to go. Jesus is not an add-on item. He is the Son of the living God. We've got to do it his way. He's the one who makes the rules. He's the one who came so that we could be acquitted. He is the one who died on the cross. He's the one who was risen from the dead. That's why religion doesn't work, by the way. Religion doesn't work because that's our attempt to get Jesus into our boat so that we can live however we want to live moving forward. It's our attempt to try to row our boat to God, and there is no mechanism that will get us from where we are to where God is unless God intervenes, and the only way God will intervene is if we're on his boat. We got to get in his boat. He's not getting in our boat. It's not the way that it works. You got to get in the boat. Look to somebody next to you and just say, you got to get in his boat. You got to get in his boat. Then once you get in the boat, by placing your trust in Jesus, here you say, how do I get in his boat? You ready for how simple this is? This is crazy. It might be the most difficult thing you have ever done, but it is the simplest thing you will ever do. Here's what you say. You say, Lord, my boat's not enough. I need to get in your boat. Your boat is more awesome. It's in your boat where you paid the penalty. It's in your boat where I can be acquitted. It's in your boat where my sin was paid in full. It's in your boat where I put my trust in you. You're the one that's going to get me safely to the other side. You're the one that's going to bring heaven down to this earth so that I can enjoy it while I'm here. It's in your boat where I experience all the blessings of God. Lord, I want to be in your boat. And you know what he says? Sure. That was the point. That's why I came. I came to help. I sure am glad that you're now in my boat, because I didn't like your boat. I didn't like the direction your boat was headed. My boat is awesome. And it's my boat that will take you on the ride of your life. Now, you do not get to touch that steering wheel, big boy. Get your hands off the giant wheel thing. This is my boat. And when you get in my boat, you do life my way. Now, I can say you get to do life my way because I'm the author and the perfecter of faith, the creator of heaven and earth, the one who was and is to come. I'm the one that conquered death, hell, and the grave. I did that for you. You didn't do nothing, and I'm not mad at you. I knew you didn't do nothing, and I knew you could do nothing. That's why I did it all. I'm glad you're in my boat. I'm glad that you're part of my family. I handpicked you from the beginning of time. That's how much I love you. I'm glad you're in my boat. Even if nobody else wants you in their boat, I'm glad you're in my boat. I want the former addict in my boat. And when the former addict gets into my boat, they no longer have to identify as a former addict. They get to say, they don't have to introduce themselves and say, my name is Jimmy, and I was addicted to crack cocaine. That's who you used to be. Now you get to introduce yourself once you get into God's boat as, my name is Jimmy, the son of the Most High God. I was adopted into his family. All things have become new. I am not who I want to be, but I'm not who I used to be. That's who I am. I am not who anybody else says I am. I am who God says that I am, and I am loved. I am accepted. I am worthy. I am, you can say this, I am all that because of what Jesus has done for me. Look to somebody and say, I am all that. I am all, have fun with this. You've always wanted to say it. You just never did. Say, I am all that. You are if you're in his boat. If you're in his boat. Once you get in his boat, once you say yes to Jesus, you know what you got to do once you get in the boat? You got to move off from the shore. A lot of us, we get in the boat and we never move off the shore. But boats weren't made for the shore. Boats were made for the ocean. Boats were made for the lake and not Lake Allatoona whenever it's not up. It was made for the lake. It was made for the ocean. It was made for the deep. It was made for the journey. I personally think it was made for the Caribbean. But you don't get to experience the Caribbean if your boat stays anchored to shore. Some of us, the reason we're stuck on the shore is because we've refused to do the very first thing that God tells us to do after we say yes to Jesus, and that is to be baptized. This isn't a baptism message. We're not even baptizing until the end of April. What month are we in? We're in March. Yeah, the end of April. This isn't a baptism message, but for some of you, the first thing you need to do when you walk out of one of these campuses today is you need to go to the Next Steps area and you need to sign up for the next baptism, because until you do, you're still on the shore. It don't matter if you've been a follower of Jesus for 10 years. You're still on the shore. You got to move off from the shore, and the way you move off from the shore is by taking a step of obedience, by being baptized. And then once you're baptized, you take another step of obedience, whatever it is that God shows you to do. And then you know what happens when you move off the shore? I'm going to go fast. You know what happens after you move off the shore? You get to enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. I said enjoy the journey, not endure the journey. If you're in, can I tell you a secret, and this is going to mess you up, and I'm totally cool with it. If you have endured the journey, it's because you've asked Jesus to be in your boat, and you've never gotten in his. Because if you're in his boat, you'll enjoy the journey. Now, that does not mean that everything's going to be easy. Sometimes it means that life's going to get more complicated. Because if you've ever been out at sea before, I've been out at sea before in one of them big old giant boats, and the stabilizer broke, and I'm sitting there bouncing up and down trying to eat my dinner and stuff, falling off the dang tables, everything else. You lay down to sit in bed that night, and you wake up, and when you get off that boat for about the next 4 days, it feels like the world's moving. You know what I'm talking about? Sometimes life's going to be bumpy, but I know that if I'm in his boat, he's going to get me from where I am to where he wants me to be. He'll get me from point A to point B. He'll get me to the other side. You got to learn how to enjoy the journey. See, sometimes we complain that we can't enjoy the journey because God's not speaking to me. God's not speaking. But you haven't read your Bible in 3 weeks. God doesn't speak to you through a closed Bible. That's his word to you. When you open up his word, and when I say open up his word, some of you, it's just hitting some buttons on your phone. Whenever you do whatever you got to do to open up your Bible, God will speak to you. And then all of a sudden, when God speaks to you in the morning when you read his word, you'll be driving down the road, and all of a sudden God will speak to you through something that he has previously said to you, because the Holy Spirit is the divine reminder, and he will remind you of something that he already brought up. He will start to speak things into your heart. He'll speak things into your life that you did not even know were there. That's what happens when you get in his boat. You got to get in his boat. All of a sudden, you'll want to pray. It's a weird thing when prayer is no longer a discipline. It's odd when it becomes a joy. It's odd when you find yourself praying for people that you want to scream at. Or it's odd when you scream at people in your mind and then you pray for them in your next breath. It's weird when you say a 30-second prayer for people you don't even know. It's weird at first, but you know what'll happen? As you learn to enjoy the journey, it won't be weird. It'll become normal, and it'll become weird when you hear about people that don't do that. That's what happens when you're in his boat. Church won't become an option. It'll be something you do. You won't wake up and say, am I going to church today? If you're in his boat, church isn't an option. But it's also not a got to. It's weird. It's not an option, and it's not a got to. It becomes a thing where it's not an option because it's a get to. I get to go to church. I don't got to. I don't got to come to church. I mean, it's highly advisable since I'm the pastor, but I don't got to. God would still love me if I didn't, but I want to. That's what happens when you're in his boat. Here's my question, and I want you to be for real. I want this to be me and you. I'm glad it's not just me and you, because I'd be depressed when I went home if it was just me and you at church on a Sunday, but as if it was just me and you, I want you to answer for real. Are you in his boat, or is he an add-on item in yours? Because if he's an add-on item in yours, it's time for you to finally say yes to Jesus today. I think we'll have people say yes to Jesus that have been coming to this church for years. I think we'll have people say yes to Jesus that have told people they're followers of Christ for years. If you can eliminate the pride that's going to try to talk you out of it. Whose boat are you in? Do you know for certain that you're in God's boat? Or do you know for certain that you've just asked him to be a part of yours? Because I don't want God to say to you one day, depart from me, I never knew you. I want him to say to you, welcome into the joy of the Lord. I want him to change you from the inside out just like he did for me. I want him to change you from the inside out just like he's done for thousands upon thousands of people in our community through this place called Freedom Church. He can do it for you. You just got to be honest. Bow your head and close your eyes at both locations if you would.